Hello everyone, I am Rushil Rungta once again. Welcome to another episode of Leadership Simplified, in conversation with people who do things differently and inspire others to do the same. My guest for today is Mr. Alvin E, founder of Haulio. Haulio is Southeast Asia's largest container haulage platform that connects hauliers and shippers to better streamline their fleet management and trucking services in real time. Welcome, Mr. Alvin. Thanks for coming to my show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So let's get on with some of my burning questions. You spent your growing up years helping your dad with the business and then joined the business straight out of university. You also helped restructure the business and started a new division focused on container trucking. Now, I'm pretty sure your father would have been very happy with you. And from my experience, when parents are happy, I can get what I want and life is good. So then, what really drove you to start Haulio?
Well, first thing first, right? Having your parents happy, yes, it does make you happy as well, but in my case, it's a little bit different. So what really made me start Haulio is because fundamentally, there are two main reasons. Number one, I felt that what I was doing in my dad's family business was not really moving along. I'm sorry to say this, but I think like with family business succession, there's usually clashes. I'm sure you are a young boy here today, right? Maybe at this early stage you don't have many clashes with your father, but I actually had a lot of that when I was working with my father. Mm-hmm. So it was a very fine line, right, between father and boss, and that was something that I think it works on both sides of the table. Like for me to acknowledge my father as a boss, and for my father to acknowledge me as an employee of this, right? So the first reason why I had to start Haulio is really because I felt that although I was doing something great for my family business, everything was doing well, I felt in a way I could do a lot more because mm-hmm. I was having so much fun in business, container trucking, and I started to realize that a lot of these problems are the same for many of these other truckers as well, the uncles out there who are also facing this problem. Mm. And that was why I decided to leave my family business and started Haulio with my co-founder, and that's how we sort of begin this. And it takes a lot to start myself, to be very honest with you.
Mm-hmm. I think really, if I were to probably relate what you said about seeing problems in other trucking or the whole industry even, I can relate it to my roles and responsibilities as a leader in school actually. And if I were to do that, I guess it would mean moving away from my comfort zone and thinking of solutions beyond just my own problems. I mean, it does sound challenging for sure, but I will definitely try and make it a part of my thought process whenever I encounter something difficult.
Yeah.
So moving on to my next question. When your co-founder proposed the idea of automating container trucking, initially you were doubtful about it, but then when you got excited about the idea and shared it with the operators and drivers of the business, the response you got was, "Don't try, a boy, cannot wonder." So with so many doubts about the business idea, how did you manage to stick to your beliefs?
It takes a lot, right? Like I was saying earlier, think of it this way. If you have been taught as a kid that 1 + 1 is equals to 2, or there's a certain way of doing something. For example, when I wake up in the morning, I go and brush my teeth. There's a certain way of doing certain things, right? And if you've been told your whole life that whatever they've been doing is like writing with your right hand today, and then someone is coming in to tell you that you have been writing it wrongly with your right hand, you actually could use your left hand to write it instead. It takes a lot, right? And I think that's really one of the biggest thing that comes in from entrepreneurs. Like you constantly disrupt yourself, and in my very particular case, in my personal story, it's very, very evident that I was doing Haulio. The first thing I need to break through is to disrupt myself, my old business that I was actually doing. Whatever that I was taught to do was kind of like not really right. And the good thing about the good and bad thing about being very deep into a certain industry is that when you are so deep, you tend to forget there could be better ways of doing certain things. And when my co-founder came in with a very fresh perspective of how he envisioned container trucking was supposed to be, it really took me a lot to sort of sink in. And I really didn't actually believe that it could work at the beginning because I simply know too much, right? But I couldn't sleep for the next 2 weeks. And I realized what he said could possibly be true. And then when you start to think outside of the box and, not thinking about your day-to-day challenges, that's where you could get that breakthrough, because you have to constantly challenge the way you think about certain things, how it's being done actually.
So I just wanted to ask, with all the criticism and all that, like, how did you really hold your ground? Like, in my case, I think somewhat I would cripple under pressure, but how did you hold your ground?
It's a great question, because I think not only in my case, but for every budding entrepreneurs out there will always be self-doubts, and it's very natural. What I would think about is how do you hold ground? It's a lot to do with upbringing and personal values and principles about what you believe in, right? Disregard what the naysayer says, because so long as you are very firmly believing in what you believe in terms of what you think something is going to be, there will always be naysayers, right? And I think that is something that you need to overcome. But I would say that one of the other things that helped me in this journey is that I knew I had my co-founder there who shared the same crazy idea together with me. So I really have a lot of respect for solo founders, people who actually started and be their own single founder, because it takes a lot more. At the very least, right, I have a co-founder to rely on. And when you have more than one person who is kind of going against you, you feel like you are in a team and you try to change the world. And the momentum picks up the moment we start to hire our first hire. We go from 3% to 5 to 8 to 10. The naysayers' voices start to drown out because internally you have more believers. So I think that is usually how trends happen, how people actually change the world. Right? You change the world because you got to believe that you can change the world first, right? Once you get past that, more people start to come on board, and naturally you'll go past this inflection point, and everybody switches to your belief that this is how the world should be, right? And that is why there are many entrepreneurs out there who actually do that. And I actually would love for your viewers and everyone at your age to start thinking, right? Challenge the contrarian belief. Why must it be like that? Could there be a better way of doing things? And I think these are really lessons learned that very applicable to your lives in the future.
I think going by your story, it's absolutely clear that one should not doubt his or her ability because of maybe lack of support or criticism. I mean, it might be difficult for children of my age because we are still learning new things every day and may not be confident about some things. But I'm sure working on this kind of skill early would only help. So now on to one of the most interesting questions. Logistics is defined as a traditional old school business, and anything traditional has its well-defined rules. Now, the average age of people in this business is also over 50. While I'm no expert, but I have observed in my family how my grandma found it difficult to order things online, while my younger brother effortlessly keeps ordering something or the other from Shopee. So how did you overcome the resistance of people to change?
Just keep trying, bro. Just keep knocking doors, right? Having that belief that the future will be different. Well, I had an article that I wrote with Today Gen Y that I spoke about how I believe the industry shouldn't be seen as sort of traditional, old school. I think in the new future, what supply chain or logistics is going to be, it's going to be very data driven. It's going to be, as businesses get digitized, as supply chain gets digitized, when you actually, I think the e-commerce world, right? Usually people have this the general public, maybe kids of your age as well, would think that, like your brother, right? He ordered a lot of things on Shopee, right? So to your heads, logistics is actually e-commerce. But logistics is a lot more than that, right? It's basically movement of goods from one point to another. It's so complex if you actually deal with international borders, right? To fly something from one country to another country, to freight something on ship from one country to another country. So there are a lot of customs, regulations, a lot of parties involved. And I think, beyond that, right, it's about where technology can play a big part, right? The Steve Jobs changed the world because he created a phone on our hands. And virtually everything is on the tip of the fingers in your phone, right? So I feel that consumerism has really been an inflection point. And the exciting thing moving forward is when businesses start to come online, right? And we will need to transform the way logistics is seen to the industry, like to the people as well. You can study supply chain. It's very interesting about how you can move something from one point to another. Beyond the physical movement of it, there's actually a lot of data points, data science efforts, automation, robotics. This should be the future of logistics, not the traditional ones that we are all thinking about. So I'm sure your grandma has also started to learn how to book using Shopee, right?
Yeah, she has.
So it's the same concept, right? It's the same concept. You'll be surprised, man, guys. Like I have uncles or drivers who actually can use the phone very well.
Nice. I think from what you said, it's quite evident, first of all, that just perseverance and that drive to keep telling people, you should change. And then the other thing is that it's quite evident that you should look at things from the other person's point of view, because that plays a very big role in, first of all, establishing that trust, and thereby making the other person open to change, as you said, changing their perspective of what logistics is. And in fact, that also ties up with one of Stephen Covey's 7 habits of highly effective people, which is seek first to understand and then to be understood.
Well done, buddy.
So, let me ask a question on the hot topic, COVID. COVID shook the foundations of some of the most well-established businesses in the world. And your company was only 2 years old when the pandemic started. So what kind of challenges did you face and what learnings did you gather from it?
I think during COVID, I actually heard from some venture capitalists and investors as well, right? It's during crises like COVID that I wouldn't claim myself to be, coming out emerging successful, but I think it's a lot of learnings that when something like that hits the world, everyone doesn't know what to do, because it's a first for most of us. The last pandemic, a lot of us were not alive yet, right? So you get the idea. But throughout this process, obviously, a lot of entrepreneurs and obviously growth was a big stifle. I mean, we are Southeast Asia's container platform. Right, we are going to be Southeast Asia's largest container trucking platform, and we have been in Singapore. One of the biggest problems is how the hell are you supposed to sort of scale this business during lockdowns? So there are a lot of priorities that got shifted. Right, we had to really sort of hold back on our expansion plans, take a step back, think a little bit longer term, and make sure that, and quoting what my investors told me back then, it was like, Alvin, just make sure that the company survives, right? You got to make sure that you can see through this uncertainty. It's the uncertainties of where this is going, right? And I think, emerging out of this now, this year in the context, obviously the world is still messed up today with the Ukraine war and stuff, but at least we are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Right? And when you have some clarity in terms of how that is done, it actually helps in terms of the planning of how a business is supposed to be run. But I think the best thing that came out from this is that it's a contrary, 2 points that happened to us. One is that, when COVID first happened, we can't travel. So a lot of it's a very relationship driven business, right? I used to travel to KL, to Indonesia, to Thailand all the time, but I couldn't travel anymore, right? We had to learn how to deal with businesses online, doing over like how I'm doing it with you now today. Right, how to establish relationship this way, how to connect this way. But then the other thing is really about, I think the world has transformed. We see a drive up in terms of adoption of digitalization that actually really benefited businesses, right? And even the moms and pops, right? They don't know how to know Zoom. Now Zoom becomes like a way of life, right? Working from home becomes a way of life. It opens up a lot of new ways of thinking how the world should be and can be with internet.
True. I completely agree. I think the initial phase of COVID was indeed very difficult for not only people, but even for companies. And I really, really honestly wish that we don't ever have to see those times again. But I think from what you said about some of the problems you face, because, haulage companies are very relationship based, as you said. But I think these challenges really help us bounce back harder and stronger. And as you said, we learn to do things differently, like we started using Zoom. So I think that's very true. So on to the fifth question. As children, we are constantly reminded about the importance of the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle to make a better future. Now, your business has a lot of big trucks, which must be consuming a large amount of fuel. So, how is Haulio helping in contributing towards sustainability?
So a few ways, right? So Haulio as a platform, right? What we are trying to do over here is to aggregate demand, sort of aggregate demand, pass it to our aggregated supply, such that we can optimize, demand and supply matching, and ensure that the routes are always optimized. We always have a container, with the trucks, so that and one of our mission actually is to sort of go for zero empty haulage mileage in Southeast Asia. We are a very firm believer of that, and going green and sustainable. We want to be the first, go-to platform in Southeast Asia to be the leading indicator for that. How do we reduce carbon footprint, right? So there are two ways. Number one, it's really better efficiency, better matching, right? That's something that we are doing on a day-to-day basis, right? Coming up with innovation such that we can help to, get the industry to drive towards electrification. That's the next step that we're talking about. I think with electric vans and cars, they are all there, right? I think motorbicycles, it's the first step. But guys, I'm dealing with huge trucks, right? You need to have that technology for battery swaps, for hydrogen powered. You even need to have the torque. So I think the industry is still learning now, right, in terms of that. And we're in a very fortunate position to work with some of the leading players in the world to try to bring this concept from China. I must say the Chinese are actually way ahead in advance in terms of heavy haulage electrification. Obviously, autonomous trucks, you guys probably have seen that in the West. All right, we are trying to how autonomous vehicles can play a role for a lot of this long haul trucking, which is something that we do as well, right? To sort of replace, I wouldn't use the word replace, is to enhance, right, the role of a driver, right? Could the driver be doing more value-added stuff, right? Because in our industry, typically you spend a lot of time away from home. You just always on the truck itself. Some of them, the trucks are their homes. So, and they have a very unhealthy lifestyle, right? I think beyond that. So how else could we, put this into the picture? So it's beyond just sustainability and green as a whole. It's sustainability in the business of trucking, right? How do we actually transform the role of drivers in this space? And I think there is always this big caveat that we have to overcome, this fear. Because drivers, when they think about, going autonomous, when they think about robotics, right, they will be thinking like, okay, I will be losing my job, right? I think that the emphasis here is more towards how can technology enable you guys, not replace you guys, right? You could be sitting behind the screen and you are actually operating 5 trucks at once rather than driving 1 truck today, right? I think with the advancement of technology, that's what we are thinking about. So carbon footprint, emission savings, we're also trying to do carbon calculator. How do we ensure shippers and truckers knowing how much are they emitting in the first place? So these are some of the activities that we are working on. It's still quite early stage, right? But I think it's the direction that we want to go towards.
Actually, this was one of the questions that I was really curious about, and from what you said, I'm truly inspired, and it just shows how every individual, or as you said, business, has a role to play in saving the environment. And the little things that I have done towards sustainability are a beach cleanup, and I've planted 2 trees for the 1 million trees movement in Singapore, and I hope to do much more.
I'm sure you can continue inspiring the industry, your generation to do that, right? Because we are older than you, right? But the world that you guys are going to live in, your future is going to be dependent on what's going to happen. And it's a very, very real problem, right? I think the world is starting to take notice now with a lot of this, 2030, green 2030, carbon zero by 2050. I probably, it's going to be a long time for all of us, but I think we're on the right track.
Very true, very true. So those are some really fantastic inputs and great tips you have given me, Mr. Alvin. But now it's time to get to know you a little bit better through the rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
You will get about 5 seconds for each question. So with that, should we begin?
Yeah, let's go.
Don't worry, I'm sure you will do well. So, what was your worst subject at school?
Math.
So, what was your favorite subject then?
Actually, I like arts a lot. I like to draw.
Same.
Right? But I am not good at that. I can understand my drawing.
So, new clothes or new phone? Your preference?
New phone.
I think that's the latest trend today. Everyone's after the new phone. So, would you rather have your own robot or a private jet?
Own jet.
Actually, that could be quite fun, a private jet. So, would you prefer...
Ideally, yes.
Sorry?
Ideally, yes. Then I don't have to, I can travel around Southeast Asia with my jet. That would be nice.
Yeah. So, would you prefer your only mode of transportation to be a donkey or a giraffe?
Interesting question. I would say giraffe, because I'm not very tall as a person. So hopefully when I ride the giraffe, I can see things higher.
Interesting choice. If your life was a story, what would it be titled?
Transformers.
I think I'll definitely...
Optimus Prime, right? I always, Optimus Prime is the prime mover of how the trucks that I'm dealing with. Yeah, Transformers is the best story.
I would definitely read that book. So, would you rather see the future or change the past?
See the future.
Okay, interesting. And last, if you won $1 million on the lottery, what would you spend it on?
Saving the world. I would reinvest into young people like you. Yeah, you are inspiring too.
That's a wise way to spend it. And as I predicted, that was a remarkable performance, Mr. Alvin. Good job.
Thank you.
So I think talking to you was really amazing. And what made your story different from the other people I interviewed was that you were already running a family business and you set out to change things in a very traditional industry. I learned several new things today and I'm very grateful to you for taking time out on a weekend. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.